A blood-red moon hung in the sky, watching like a cruel eye over the cold land of Duskvale. Snow covered the ground like a white shroud, silent and still. In the heart of the Crimson Mountains stood a black castle, sharp like broken teeth. Inside, Queen Seraphina sat upon her throne, carved from dark stone and decorated with silver thorns. Her long cloak, made of raven feathers, trailed across the cold floor. Her pale face was calm, but her eyes burned with hate. "All werewolves," she declared, her voice echoing through the great hall, "are enemies of the crown. They will never set foot in this realm without paying in blood." The vampires around her bowed their heads. None dared speak against her. They knew the story. They knew her pain. Long ago, during the fragile peace between vampires and werewolves, her younger sister was sent to meet with a werewolf prince in secret. But only her torn cloak returned. Seraphina had cried for a week. Then, her heart turned to stone. Since that day, she had ruled with cold fury, striking down any werewolf who dared approach her borders. But far beyond her walls, in the dense forests of Elmsreach, another figure stood under that same red moon. He was tall and strong, with wild dark hair and sharp gold eyes. His name was Kalen, a werewolf, once a proud warrior of the Nightclaw pack, now cast out. He carried a deep scar across his neck, the mark of punishment for disobedience. Years ago, he had refused to take part in a raid on a vampire village. He had even spared a young vampire woman, hiding her from his pack. That act of mercy had cost him everything. Now he wandered the woods, hated by his kind, hunted by hers. But Kalen had heard whispers. The vampire queen had renewed her war. He knew what it meant. Blood would spill again, and innocents would die on both sides. He could not let that happen. Standing alone on a snow-covered hill, Kalen looked up at the red moon. He placed his hand on his chest and bowed his head. "I go to the queen, not for battle, but for peace," he said aloud. "Even if she takes my life, I'll prove not all werewolves are the same." With that vow, he began the long journey toward the Crimson Court, knowing it may be his final walk. Far away, high in her dark tower, Seraphina stood by the window, staring at the same moon. The wind whispered through the glass, and something stirred in her heart, something she had buried for many years. But she turned away, not knowing that the one who could change her fate was already walking toward her. The night was still, but destiny had begun to move. Kalen walked for many days through bitter winds and dark woods. He crossed rivers and rocky paths, each step taking him closer to the Crimson Court. His strength began to fade, but he didn't stop. The snow was deep, and shadows watched from every tree, but he was not afraid. He had faced worse. One night, as he neared the Black Mountains, vampire scouts found him. He raised no weapon. He showed no fear. He simply said, "Take me to your queen. I come in peace." They laughed, but their sharp eyes watched him closely. "A werewolf coming to the queen? That's a death wish," one hissed. Still, they chained him in silver and dragged him to the castle. Inside, the Crimson Court was silent when he entered. Vampires lined the stone halls, staring at him with cold eyes. The scent of blood was thick in the air, but Kalen stood tall, though silver burned his wrists. He was led below the castle, far beneath the earth, into the prison of thorns. The prison was a dark place, made of iron and stone. Sharp black vines grew from the walls, covered in thorns that moved like they were alive. The thorns stole warmth from the air and whispered softly when no one was near. They locked Kalen in a cell where the walls pulsed with ancient magic. The floor was cold as death, and the silence pressed on his chest like a weight. Still, he said nothing. He waited. Later, the door opened. Footsteps echoed, slow, sharp, and full of purpose. Queen Seraphina entered the cell, her cloak trailing behind her like a shadow. Her red eyes looked at him, calm but dangerous. "So," she said, voice like ice, the wolf who walks into a lion's den. "Are you brave or just foolish?" Kalen met her gaze. "Neither. I'm tired of war. I came to offer peace." "Peace," she said, stepping closer. "Your kind slaughtered my sister, burned our villages, broke every promise. I know, Kalen said. That's why I came. Not all of us wanted that war. I disobeyed my own pact to stop the bloodshed. Serafina narrowed her eyes. Her gaze fell on the scar across his neck. She recognized it. Her cousin had spoken of a werewolf with a deep neck scar, the one who had spared her life. She said nothing, but her thoughts were loud inside her mind. You will stay here, she said at last. You say you want peace. Prove it. Survive. Then she turned and left, her footsteps fading into the dark. Kalen sat back against the wall. The thorns around him whispered like snakes. But he was not afraid. Somewhere deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. If he had to suffer to earn her trust, he would. High above, Serafina looked out over her kingdom. For the first time in years, she doubted her own hatred. But she did not yet understand why. Cold days passed in the prison of thorns. Kalen remained quiet. The guards came with bloodless food and left without speaking. The walls whispered to him in the dark, but he did not listen. He waited. Then one evening, Queen Serafina returned, her long cloak moving like smoke behind her. She stood outside his cell with her head held high. You say you want peace, she said. Words are easy. Trust is not. If you want my respect, you must survive the trials. Kalen stood. What kind of trials? She stepped closer. 3 ancient tests. They were made long ago to break the weak. If you pass them, I will grant you an audience. If not, you'll be forgotten in these halls. Kalen nodded once. I accept. Serafina gave no smile, but her eyes narrowed with interest. The next day, Kalen was taken to the Hall of Ashes. It was a dark chamber where the walls were coated in the burned remains of warriors who had failed. In the center stood the first trial, the Labyrinth of Ashes. He was pushed inside, and the doors closed behind him. The air was thick with smoke, and the walls shifted like a maze of fire and dust. Illusions began to form. Wolves he had fought beside, some who had turned against him. He saw faces from his past, angry, accusing, crying out his name. His heart pounded, his breath short, but he did not run. He remembered who he was. He followed the sound of his own heartbeat, step by step, until the illusions faded and the exit appeared. He had passed the first trial. The second came the next night, the Feast of Thorns. Kalen was brought before a silver goblet filled with vampire blood. Around him, vampires whispered that this would drive him mad. A werewolf drinking such blood was against the law of his kind. It was said to twist the mind. But Kalen drank. Pain hit him at once. His body shook, and his vision blurred. In his mind, he saw things he had never known, visions from Serafina's life. A warm sunlit garden, a laughing child with white hair. Then a cry, blood, a scream cut short. He fell to his knees, but didn't let go. When the vision ended, he looked up, weak but still in control. The vampires were silent. None expected him to survive. On the third night, Serafina herself came to watch. This trial was called the Rite of Reflection. Kalen was taken to a chamber of mirrors. The room shimmered with magic, and suddenly, a perfect copy of Kalen stepped from the glass. Same face, same strength, but with anger in its eyes. They fought fiercely. The mirror Kalen spoke with poison. You are a fool. She will never love you. You are nothing to her. Kalen answered only with silence and strength. In the end, he broke the mirror with a final blow. Serafina stared at him as the dust settled. She said nothing, but her heart beat faster. He had survived the trials. The air in the Crimson Court was alive with music and whispers. It was the Night of Masks, a royal masquerade held once every 100 years. Vampires from across the land gathered in the Grand Hall, dressed in fine silks and shining armor. Candles floated in the air, casting flickering light across the black stone floor. Queen Serafina stood at the top of the stairs, her mask made of silver and carved like a wolf's face, perhaps a quiet message to the court. Her eyes scanned the crowd, but her mind was on one person, Kalen. He entered the hall wearing a dark tunic and a plain iron mask. He stood tall among the vampires, calm but alert. Many turned to stare. Some whispered. Others laughed quietly. A werewolf among vampires? It had never happened before, but he did not flinch. Serafina watched from above. She had given him permission to walk freely for one night only. If he made a single mistake, she would not protect him. Lord Mocker, her cousin and closest advisor, approached her. His mask was golden and his voice cold. "You let the wolf walk among us? What message does that send, my queen?" Seraphina replied without looking at him. "He passed the trials. Few of our own could do that." "It's dangerous," Mocker warned. "He's still a beast." Before she could respond, the music stopped. A sharp cry rang out. From the far side of the room, a shadow moved through the crowd. A figure in a crimson cloak drew a dagger and rushed toward the queen. Kalen saw the flash of silver and didn't think. He ran through the crowd, faster than any eye could follow. Just before the blade struck, he threw himself in front of her. The dagger sank into his side. Gasps filled the hall. Kalen fell to his knees, blood dripping from his tunic. Seraphina caught him before he hit the ground, her arms around him. For a long moment, the room was silent. "Why?" she whispered, her voice shaking. He looked up at her, pain in his eyes. "Because I meant what I said. I came for peace, not just for me, for all of us." The guards dragged the attacker away. Lord Mocker stood frozen, his face hidden behind his golden mask. Later, in a quiet chamber, Seraphina sat beside Kalen as a healer worked on his wound. He was pale but awake. "You're a fool," she said softly. "You could have died. I knew the risk." Seraphina reached out and touched his hand. For the first time, there was no anger in her eyes. No hate, just something quiet, something unsure. She stood and turned away before he could see her expression. Outside, the candles still burned, but something had changed in the air. A seed had been planted, and though neither of them could say it yet, something was growing between them. The sky was gray with clouds, and the wind howled over the peaks of the Crimson Mountains. Deep inside the castle, Queen Seraphina led Kalen through a secret stone passage. His wound from the masquerade had mostly healed, but the pain still lingered. He followed her in silence, curious but cautious. They walked in silence until they reached a black iron gate covered in ancient symbols. Seraphina placed her hand against it. The gate creaked open, and a cold wind rushed out. "This is the Whispering Tomb," she said softly. "Only a true ruler of the Crimson Court may enter." Kalen stepped in after her. The chamber beyond was lit by pale blue fire that floated in the air. Stone coffins lined the walls, each one marked with a crest and a name carved deep into the stone. Voices echoed faintly, soft and full of sorrow. "They are speaking," Kalen said, frowning. "Yes," Seraphina replied. "The spirits of vampire queens who ruled before me. They whisper secrets to those who listen." As they walked further, Kalen noticed a coffin near the center. Its lid was carved with the image of a woman with long hair and kind eyes. "My sister," Seraphina said, her voice quieter now. "She believed in peace, even when I didn't. She trusted the werewolves, and it cost her life." Kalen lowered his head. "I'm sorry for what happened. I truly am." Seraphina nodded once, though her eyes remained on the coffin. Then, the flame closest to them turned bright red. A low whisper rose up, louder than before. Seraphina moved quickly to an altar near the wall. A large book lay there, open to a page written in both vampire and wolf script. Her hands trembled slightly as she read it. "It's a prophecy," she whispered, "one I've never seen before." Kalen stepped beside her and read the words aloud. "When blood meets moon and the past is faced, the scarred wolf and the queen of night shall rise or fall with joined fate's grace, to break the curse or end the light." Seraphina turned to him. "The scarred wolf, it speaks of you. And me." He looked into her eyes. "Then we're part of something larger than either of us." Before she could respond, a loud rumble shook the tomb. The flames flickered wildly. From the far end of the chamber, one of the oldest coffins cracked open. A cold wind swept through the tomb. Seraphina's eyes widened. "No, it can't be." A deep voice echoed from the darkness, cold and ancient. "I have waited long for this moment." Kalen stepped in front of her, growling low. "What is that?" he asked. Seraphina's voice trembled. "Velcras," she said. "The first vampire. The one even the tombs could not hold forever." The firelight dimmed, and far above, the clouds parted. The red moon returned. Dawn broke cold and gray over the Crimson Court. Word of Velcris's stirring in the whispering tomb spread through the castle like wildfire. In the grand hall, Queen Seraphina stood before her council, a ring of pale faces and judgment. At their head was Lord Mocker, her own cousin. "The queen's mind is broken," Mocker said, voice smooth as silk. "She trusts a werewolf. She courts disaster." Seraphina's blood ran hot, but she held herself still. "Kalen saved my life. He faced our trials. He earned my trust." A murmur rose among the courtiers. Mocker's lip curled. He stepped forward. "We have ancient weapons, sunlight-forged spears and shields. With them, we can strike Velcris down now. But your wolf companion would ruin everything." Seraphina's heart pounded. She knew what he proposed, Kalen's death. Without him, she had no hope. Yet she spoke from her throne. "I will not lose him." Mocker's eyes blazed. "Then you lose me." He snapped his fingers. The Blood Guard, vampires sworn to protect the royal bloodline, raised their spears. Their polished tips glowed with trapped sunlight. In an instant, the hall erupted. Mocker's faction charged, and Seraphina's loyal guard answered. Vampires clashed in silver and shadow. Screams echoed through the corridors. Above in her tower, Seraphina found Kalen wounded but alive. He had rushed to her side when he heard the alarm. His tunic was torn, and a shallow sun-tinged cut ran along his arm. Yet his eyes were steady. "They brought sunlight weapons," he said, wrapping her wounds even as the castle shook. "They want to kill me." Seraphina's voice cracked. "No one can kill you while I live." She held him close. "We must leave. Now." He helped her from the chamber window. Below, chaos reigned. Mocker's blood guard split the castle in two. Seraphina slid down the stone wall, then landed beside Kalen. Together, they ran through hidden passages known only to the royal family. They emerged in the old stables, where ancient horses slept. Seraphina called to a midnight black stallion, her sister's favorite, still fierce and loyal. Kalen mounted first, then reached up to lift Seraphina into the saddle behind him. As they rode into the winter woods, sunlight broke through the clouds and struck the castle towers. The sunlight-forged spears glowed bright, aiming at them from the ramparts. Kalen urged the horse forward. Hooves pounded through deep snow. Behind them, the gates slammed shut, sealing the Crimson Court with dust and smoke. Seraphina closed her eyes and leaned against Kalen's back. "I have lost my crown," she whispered. He shook his head. "You have not lost your heart." A silence fell between them. Far off, the wind carried the faint echo of Velcris's laughter. Even in flight, they felt his power stirring. But beneath Seraphina's fear, a new strength grew. She had chosen loyalty over legacy. She had chosen love over hate. And on that frozen night, as the two fugitives vanished into the forest, they began to forge their own path, one shaped by trust, blood, and the promise of a future neither had dared to imagine before. Kalen and Seraphina pressed deeper into the frost-swept forest. Their breaths steamed in the moonlight, and every snap of twig or rustle of snow made their hearts race. Behind them, the Crimson Court lay silent and fallen. Ahead, an old map led them toward the moonlit grove, a hidden place said to hold the moonlit pact. They rode until the trees grew so thick that moonlight barely pierced the canopy. Then they dismounted and led Seraphina's black stallion on foot. Branches clawed at their cloaks, but they pushed on, trusting the map and each other. As they walked, Seraphina spoke softly. "Kalen, I fear what Velcris will do. He grows stronger every hour." Her pale face held both worry and resolve. Kalen reached for her hand. "He will not win. We have each other, and we have the old magic." His voice was steady, though his pulse thundered in his throat. The pack can bind him. They crossed a frozen stream and climbed a steep hill. At the top stood a circle of ancient stones, half hidden by ice and moss. The moonlit grove. In the center lay a shallow basin carved in silver, engraved with intertwined wolf and bat symbols. Seraphina knelt beside it. She traced the runes with a trembling finger. "We honor both our natures," she whispered. "We bleed together. We share our strength together." Kalen knelt opposite. He drew a small dagger from his belt. Its silver blade glimmered like starlight. He pressed the tip gently into his palm. Warm blood welled in a red droplet. He let it fall into the basin. Seraphina drew her own blade, thinner but sharp enough to draw a line of red. Her blood joined his. The basin glowed. Silver light streamed upward, weaving around them like threads of moonbeams. But before they could complete the pact, the forest trembled. A deep roar echoed, shaking the ancient stones. Velcros had come. From the shadows, he emerged, a monstrous shape taller than any man, his eyes burning like coals. His wings, black as void, spread wide. He laughed, a sound that froze the blood in their veins. "Fools," he hissed. "You think your petty ritual can bind me?" Kalen rose to face him, claws extending, silver and fierce. Seraphina stood behind him, sword drawn, her cloak swirling like a living shadow. Velcros moved forward in a blur, sweeping Kalen aside. The werewolf tumbled to the ground as Velcros advanced on Seraphina. He raised a hand, and she felt a cold grip around her heart. Kalen leaped to his feet, pain forgotten, and threw himself at Velcros. Their fight was thunder and storm. Claws tore at ancient flesh. Swords clashed with bone. Yet every blow the lovers struck seemed to chip Velcros' power. Streaks of pale light flared where their weapons met his dark skin. Seraphina broke free of his grip and ran to Kalen's side. Together, they pressed closer to the basin. The light blazed brighter, forming a pillar that caught Velcros in its glow. He screamed, a raw, furious sound, and reeled backward. The light wound around his limbs, burning him with silver fire. He thrashed, but the magic held, binding his wings, sealing his power. At last, with one final cry, Velcros dissolved into a swirl of black mist, sucked down into the basin. The light dimmed. Silence settled over the grove. Kalen and Seraphina fell to their knees, exhausted but victorious. Their hands found each other's, bloodied and trembling. Together, they had completed the moonlit pact, and with it, they had stopped the ancient terror. Above, the moon shone full and bright, as if blessing their union and the new dawn of peace it would bring. At dawn, Kalen and Seraphina emerged from the moonlit grove. Their clothes were torn, and their skin bore new scars, but their eyes shone with triumph. Behind them lay the basin where Velcros had vanished. Before them stood the path back to the Crimson Court, a place that had turned against them not long ago. They rode in silence through the frosty forest. The air smelled of pine and fresh snow. When the gates of the castle appeared, Kalen's heart beat fast. He expected spears and shouts. He expected hate. Instead, the gates opened slowly. Vampires and werewolves stood side by side, members of Seraphina's loyal guard, and Kalen's pack, led by a wolf with silver fur. Both sides gazed at the couple with awe and relief. At the courtyard's center, Seraphina dismounted. She held out her hand to Kalen, and he helped her down. She looked at her people, then at the werewolves. "Today," she called, her voice clear and strong, "we stand together." Her silver mask glinted in the sunlight. "We have beaten Velcros, not by killing each other, but by uniting our strengths." Her pack leader, Greyfur, stepped forward. He bowed deeply to Kalen. "Your loyalty saved us all," he said. "Your courage proves there is hope for our two kinds." Seraphina turned to her council, where Lord Mocker watched with downcast eyes. "I was blind with hate," she said, "but now I see. Wolves and vampires can be allies. We can be friends." A hush fell. Then, one by one, the council members lowered their heads in respect. Even Mocker bowed his head, though his face was stern. Seraphina reached for Kalen's hand. He squeezed it gently. Around them, the gathered crowd began to cheer, first softly, then in a roar that echoed off the castle walls. The queen led Kalen to her throne. There, she knelt, pulling him down beside her. "Rise with me, Sir Kalen, Knight of the Crimson Court," she announced. The crowd burst into applause. Greyfur brought forward a banner. half blood-red with a bat's wing, half silver with a wolf's paw. Seraphina raised it high. This is our new standard. From this day forward, we fight together. Kalen bowed to the crowd, then to Seraphina. My queen, he said, my heart belongs to you, and to this realm we share. Seraphina smiled, an expression so rare it took every breath from Kalen's lungs. She stood and drew him into an embrace. Around them, the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the courtyard. Birds, rare in these northern lands, sang overhead. The scent of pine and earth mixed with the first flowers of spring. The long feud between vampires and werewolves was over. That night, under a full white moon, Seraphina and Kalen stood atop the highest tower. She laid her head on his shoulder. He wrapped his arms around her. No more hatred? She asked. No more, he replied softly. They watched the moon's light bathe the castle and forest in silver glow. In that moment, two hearts, once enemies, beat as one. And though the age of blood and shadow had cast its long shadow across the land, it was love, steadfast and true, that finally brought dawn to Duskvale.